We'd like to talk to you a little bit today about one of the chapters in the e-book, The Guide to the Standards of Proficiency for Social Care Workers. Now, the e-book was written by social care workers for social care workers. So we have 80 chapters for you to read and download from the Social Care Ireland website. But we're just going to focus a little bit on one of those chapters that myself and Noelle Riley wrote together, which is chapter 67. And that chapter is all about, it's in Domain 5, which is the purple book, if you're going to download it, and it's Domain 5 Standard of Proficiency 6. Now what that domain is asking us, what that standard of proficiency is asking us, is that we can demonstrate the skills in evidence-informed practice. And to help us understand, well, what is evidence-informed practice, they're saying that you should have knowledge of theories and frameworks and concepts that underpin the best practice in social care. So what we decided to do at the start of our chapter was just to give you an example of what a theory is. So if we take the theory of evidence-informed practice, so a theory explains a phenomenon. So the theory and our understanding was, well, what is evidence-informed practice? Now we decided to take two theories together. Nelson and Campbell, they talked about evidence not just being based on research, but also including the experiences of the workers on the ground in the different settings or the context of care. And then also the service user, their wishes, their world, and all the different multidisciplinary teams and the knowledge that we learn while we're working in these settings. And then we also wanted to incorporate a theory by Lewis, who was telling us that we have evidence, but we mustn't forget practice wisdom. And that is the knowledge that the worker, when they're working for years within a setting, develops over time. And they can share that knowledge with the students that come on placement and with their colleagues. So when we look at our model just there that's illustrated on the slide, you can see that one theory is explaining a phenomenon. When we put them together, we have a framework, and when we illustrate that, we have a model. So we're going to show you the model that we designed to be able to help explain, well, what is the knowledge which becomes evidence? So that helps us, gives us the how we reduce the gap between knowledge and practice. So we decided to give you an illustrated framework of theories that we presented as the SCIP model. Now the title SCIP, it does relate to evidence informing practice, but because we want to encompass what Lewis was saying about practice wisdom and the fact that our knowledge is situated, we have called this social care knowledge informing practice, and that's our SCIP model. And it's a new model, so today we're just introducing it, but we're hoping that we can invite social care workers and graduates in the future to talk about this model and whether or not it relates to their experience of evidence-informed practice. So when we were thinking about the knowledge that we learned, and also from our own research by talking to social care workers in the field, and we were asking them, well, what do you learn about social care? And we have three categories, broad categories of knowledge. So the very first one is, what is social care? So to help us gather evidence on what is social care, as part of this book, we asked 80, all our chapter authors, to tell us from their perspective and through their practice lens what social care is, so that you have this evidence now at the beginning of every chapter, which will help you see the commonalities between different workers, to see, well, a certain author came from a particular discipline, so I wonder, has that influenced their perspective on what social care work is? So the evidence on what social care is within the overall book at the start of each chapter. So when you start as a student and you start on your long journey and your fabulous career of becoming a social care worker, so we are telling you through all the different modules that you will learn while you're in the classroom, you'll learn psychology, sociology, and they're all helping you understand what social care work is. But one of the experience that really brought it home to me when I was a student was when I went out on placement and had my first experience of being in a social care setting surrounded by social care workers and service users. And that's when it really made sense to me what social care work is. So we have included here and given the title to this experience, our situated knowledge. Because from our different experiences, like my very first experience was in the disability setting, and I only ever wanted to work in the disability setting when I started as a student in social care. I was sure, I was convinced, I want to be a social care worker and I want to work in disability settings. And I had my very first experience. I was learning manual handling. I was supporting people who was having their lunch. I was assisting them with showers and with lunches. So I was learning a whole set of situated skills and knowledge within the disability centre that I was in. I was also learning some of the psychological, so learning the different language, the tools of how to communicate with different people. And I was also learning how to fill out the forms that were relevant to that setting. And then when I went on my second placement, I was working in children's residential care, and that was a very different context of care with a lot of different experiences. I was working with children, I was learning how to communicate with young people, and I was learning how all behaviour is communication and how to try and understand where the young person is coming from and how best to meet their needs in a human rights-based approach. I was filling out different forms, I was learning different policies. So our situated knowledge, it really is, it's located within the setting that we're working in. And depending on where we go as social care workers, we are going to learn new skills and new knowledge. And how we learn that is by the social care workers, the practice educators who are there. So they become both a teacher and a student. So they're always learning on practice, as we all are. We're always learning on practice. Every day is a new school day. So we're students in learning about best approaches and how to have planned work with others. But then we're also teachers. We are constantly sharing what we've learned with others. And Lev and Wenger would have called this a community of practice and these shared competencies that we learn and we develop and we become masterful of over our experiences. So the next category of knowledge that we're moving on is how to do social care work. So as I was saying, when I went into the placement in my first year experience, they were teaching me the actual skills of how to care for people, how to develop a relationship with somebody who was maybe was non-verbal, how to understand how they were communicating with me and how to communicate back, how to establish rapport, and learning that the relationship that we have with the service users that we encounter is the centre of our practice. But most fundamentally, I bring myself to work. So how I do social care work depends a lot on the work that I have done with myself, learning all about my values, my experiences growing up, my socialization, all the things that I've learned from my own culture and my own upbringing. And then I need to examine those notes and work on myself and develop myself first as the first skill that I learn in order to how to do social care work. So just because we're focusing very briefly on this and it's an introduction to our chapter, I'm going to pass you over to my co-author, Noelle Riley, and she's going to go on to the next category of knowledge and the next section. So I'm just going to slide over.
So the next area that we're going to chat about for a couple of minutes is that the whole area around practice wisdom and looking at professional expertise. And the reason why this is so important in our model is that while it's great to have theory to inform our work and a good level of our self-awareness and what's recommended in terms of best practice, we also need to be able to look at what we're comfortable at doing ourselves, what our own experiences have been in the past, what works for us as workers. So I worked with a young person at one stage who loved to get hugs from certain people on the team, but other people on the team couldn't give her hugs. That's practice wisdom. That's knowing what works in the context of a particular young person or a particular service user that you won't always capture in documentation and in paperwork or in theory in college, because it's built up over time. It depends very much on where you've come from yourself. Your own journey through social care links very much to what Denise has just spoken about in terms of our ability to know ourselves and be comfortable with the good, the bad and the ugly of who we are, and then also within the context of our own organisation. So the first kind of person that we read about who wrote around the whole area of practice wisdom were Klein and Bloom, and that was back in the 90s, where they recognised the intersection between theory and theoretical knowledge, but also what's happening on the ground, boots on the floor, what works in a particular setting and context. And that's the practice wisdom piece that we felt when we look at social care knowledge informing practice, we need to look at the knowledge that you all gain as part of your own day-to-day work as initially social care students on placement and then finally as social care workers. So combined with practice wisdom is that piece around professional expertise. And remember that the proficiency we're writing about asks us to be able to work in an evidence-informed manner. So in other words, we're able to look at evidence, whether it's evidence from theory or evidence that you've learned over the course of your work that you can support, and how you're able to pull all that together in terms of your approach to your work when you're actually working with service users or with clients or residents, depending on your context. We have so many different ways how we describe the people that we work with and alongside, depending on where we are, and that feeds into all of our professional expertise as we journey through. So looking at the professional expertise piece, we looked at the work of Gambrill in 2013, who recognised that integration bit that we're talking about, the integration between the evidence and the knowledge you've garnered over the years of work and the current situation that you're dealing with at that moment in time, and how it all feeds in together. So no model could be complete without ensuring that we captured that piece in terms of evidence-informed practice. And when I did my research originally, I was still working in social care at the time in a mainstream residential, and we very much relied on what we had seen work before when we looked at what interventions we could use with young people. And that came through quite a lot in the research, that we're most comfortable in working in an evidence-informed manner when we're comfortable with the interventions that we're using, and that comes from experience. So our model captures that as well as a key driver. Part of all of that is the client or the service user or the resident or the young person that we're working with, and the context of their lives, where they're coming from and what works for them. Going back to maybe what Denise was saying there around the communication systems that people with intellectual disabilities may use, what works with one service user would antagonise another. And it's about having that insight into the service user's own life and their own journey and their own skill set that supports an intervention that we may use in our evidence-informed practice that we're engaging in. So that's where those two pieces of the model kind of slot in together, and that's why our model is capturing social care knowledge over a whole gambit, not just the evidence-informed. So that's to Denise.
And what we wanted you to take away from today and talking about, our chapter within the ebook, and that one standard of proficiency in of itself is that it's trying to help you understand that everything that we learn, all the different, like the jigsaw pieces. So when you're in college and you're learning a theory or you're learning a concept from one of your modules, and you say, well, how does it all fit together? It is like a jigsaw, and all of this is informing you under the categories, the three categories of knowledge, so that you're learning something about what is social care, how to do social care, or the service user and his or her world. One of the things that we wanted to say was very central to our model of this. It is a model on evidence-informed practice. It is the knowledge of social care, so it's our SCIP model, but it is a recognition that the relationship and a relational approach to social care has to be understood as the center of all that we do. It's recognizing from both of our research that social care workers would tell us stories of their practice as evidence, and these stories contained the relationship, a story of a relationship that they had with one other person or with the group, and that's how they could explain the evidence and what they are learning about what's best to do. It's through that relationship, and that is central. So we're going to leave our little piece here, and then if you want to learn more about the relationship and relationship approach to social care, to go to Dr. Teresa Brown's chapter within the ebook, and she's going to give you a little bit of an explanation about that as well on the podcast series, but also in the conference here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.